Radix qualified for NHRL finals for the first time in the June 2024 qualifier. Combat Robotics is a competition won by attention to detail and consistent performance. I knew this. Between June and December, I changed two small issues with my robot. First, I added a sharpened blade to my arsenal to deal with wide TPU bots like Fully Defined, Turbo Fiend, and Jelly Baby. And secondly, I added binding barrels to my weapon hub to better hold my weapon screws in. This change was made to prevent my weapon from popping off if I was hit by a big vert while I was upside down. These minuscule changes meant to address tiny issues were ultimately my downfall. For those of you who haven't seen, I was having a back and forth fight with Turbo Fiend in the round of 16 of finals. After the opening exchange, the fight swung my way. I had disabled one side of their drive and was bullying the mini-bot, while Turbo Fiend was trying to recover. With 15 seconds left in the fight, I bounced off of Turbo Fiend, got stuck in the wall, and was counted out. Sharpened blade, maybe not such a good idea. At least I didn't know how to use it properly. After some asking around the Discord, I've heard that I should have been spinning it faster to minimize my bite, so I wouldn't get stuck in walls or stuck in the floor, so I'm willing to try it again. However, if I lose finals again the same way, I'm never going to live that down. Secondly, the binding barrels. To fit them, I had to increase the diameter of the holes in my weapon hub by 1.2 millimeters. I didn't even think about a change that small. Come December 2024, and the pulley cracked in every single fight. Luckily, Radix's weapon still works with half a pulley.
Not to worry, we are still flying half a ship.
I never made a finals recap, so consider that it. The June 2025 competition has just ended, and I've qualified yet again for finals, once again by not even making it to the top 4. In fact, none of the qualifiers from this tournament had to make it to the top 4 to qualify. It was a strange tournament. Such small changes crippled my robot in finals 1 year ago, so what's my new approach? What will I be doing differently? I'm redesigning the entire robot. Why? Well, I'll answer that near the end of the video. To understand the answer, we'll need to take a step back and look at past versions of Radix and how they got us here. Classic Red Radix appeared at the July 2022 NHRL. It had a squishy TPU frame printed by Seth Schaefer of Team Just Cause Robotics, rectified brand brushed drive, big old foam wheels, and a blade mounted in that TPU frame. With zero clearance between the blade and the frame, you can see where I'm going with this.
And Revolver just looks lost there, Kyle.
Yeah, really.
The weapon could be down on Radix.
Might be, yeah. That was a very loud weapon that we're not really hearing any of right now.
The spin-up on Radix sounded scary, but that's because I was using a motor that gave me a theoretical tip speed of 426 miles per hour. However, all the weapon could do was spin. Impacts led to the loss of my belt, the loss of pulleys, a damaged shaft, not to mention that my foam tires made the robot almost impossible to control. It wasn't a bad outing. I went 2-2 in my first tournament with the bot. Radix version 2 had a much taller frame, with the height being used to separate the weapon from the frame. I also used a stiffer TPU from Amazon to help keep the weapon in place. The actual hardware on the weapon changed too. I switched from a bolt from Lowe's to alloy steel, and from needle roller bearings to ball bearings that you'd find in a skateboard. This was all accompanied by a larger blade for the bot, now with a 7.5 inch diameter. This bot fought at Extreme STEM in Ohio. Oh, and Radix is blue now. That seems important. After getting bodied by Owen's bot Spectroscope twice, I learned a couple new lessons. The weapon still failed. I had just moved the failure point. Now that the weapon stayed mechanically intact, the ESC was blowing up after every couple spin-ups. Even with those limited hits across only 3 fights, the weapon made from Sencut Send AR500 was so badly damaged, I gave it away to Owen as a trophy after the tournament. The new TPU also just wasn't it. It provided about as much protection as a wet paper towel. At Extreme, I went 1-2 and took third. Going into the following summer, I showed up at Owen's house and got my new AR600 blades. My mangled blade still hanging on his wall. I ended up settling on a much bigger weapon motor, the Badass 2814, powered by the Castle Creations Micro Mamba X2. To improve my control, I coated the wheels with rubber cement and latex. Thanks, Calvin. What followed was the worst performance for Radix to date. To give a short list of things that went wrong, the heavier motor warped the 3D printed top plate, being invertible isn't a strength if the other robot is short, I hurt Bart's face, and the weapon could still hit the pulley. With the electronic issues fixed, the failure point moved back to my pulleys, where it was originally. The tournament result, 1-2. This year, there were 2 summer NHRLs, which meant I could upgrade the bot and return to fight before the semester started. Carbon fiber plates were added to stiffen the front end of the robot. The first machine parts were introduced to Radix as well. An aluminum plate to hold the weapon motor and an aluminum brace to mount the weapon. Radix version 3 was born. My August tournament was a lot of fun. I got to fight NHRL legends Evan Arias with Shred It Bro and Seth Schaefer with SSP, who printed the first Radix frame a year prior. However, my performance wasn't much better. I went 2-2. That brings us to 6-8 total if you're keeping track. The culprit? My flexing frame once again. I also had issues with my drive cutting out randomly in the Shred It Bro and SSP fight. Determined to fix the frame flexing issue, I printed a glass-filled nylon part meant to clamp into my frame, which would support both the weapon and weapon motor. When the weapon flexed, the motor would be forced to flex with it, moving out of the way on big hits. I have an entire video on just this part if you're interested. I also replaced my drive motors with geckos from Seth's store, Team Just Cause Robotics. This is the second time I've purchased parts from someone I've lost to, immediately after losing to them too. Extreme this year told a different story. Not of the old, unreliable Radix, but of a new, durable one. I went 5-0, winning this tournament. I was hyped for NHRL, having finally a half-decent bot to show Radix version 4 could deliver a punch and take one too. I made my way over to Norwalk from Ohio that spring, leading the Combat Robotics group from the University of Dayton. I was competing with Radix and the 12-pound drum spinner Radon, which ended up getting maximized. The team also brought Gotham, a 12-pound horizontal, and Raise the Roof, a 3-pound dual lifter. Radix's April 2024 performance could be labeled as alright. I showed the devastating power of my weapon against Ace and Fifan, but my lack of skill as a driver cost me against Half-Life. To be fair, that bot is a nightmare for horizontal spinners. I decided to go back in June to give it one more shot. I spent the summer practicing my driving, but made no changes to the bot. Oh, and I also used all that time to write up a strategy document on every single 3-pound robot that registered for the tournament. I had a little bit too much time on my hands. This was the money tournament. I made it to the quarterfinals and qualified for finals through what I can only describe was an act of God. Normally, only the top 4 qualify, but if a top 4 bot has already qualified, the next highest rank gets it. And there was an insane qualification chain. I was eliminated by Jelly Baby in much the same way I lost to Half-Life. Another close judge's decision. This time, my weapon motor did die at the end, but it was because I pushed it too hard, and used it to escape pins. I was in finals. Any changes I made now would be minor, and I just wanted to close some gaps in the robot's performance. For finals, I debuted version 5. I gave it a new name mostly because of its distinct profile, featuring a skinnier nose than past versions of the bot. I also made the changes mentioned in the introduction of this video, the binding barrels and the sharp blade, which both ended up not being good changes. I went 2-1 at finals, but one of those wins was a forfeit from Clyde. I was happy, but Radix still feels B tier, with A tier bots being tournament winners and S tier bots being Golden Brett contenders. I wanted to push into the next tier, but still had an undamaged Radix from December. I signed up with the exact same robot for June 2025 and got another deep run going. If the new Radix is anything, it's consistent. I went out in the same round I did a year prior, losing to Caldera in what is now my favorite match of all time. It was back and forth until it wasn't. My inferior bot simply gave out against the #1 rank, and everything failed at once. The bot was totaled, and it was also my last copy of that version of Radix. I had two options. Option 1, costing about $500, rebuild Radix for finals. Option 2, carry out the largest redesign ever on Radix, and build that version. This would cost about $1,500. I chose option 2, and it wasn't even that hard a decision. Here's why. I'm stealing this analogy from a YouTuber who was named Technoblade. There was a math test called the American Math Contest, given to students in the country with a large scholarship award for the best. It was one of those tests where you'd get points for getting questions right, you'd get nothing for leaving blanks, but you'd lose points for getting questions wrong. It was a setup meant to discourage guessing because on average you'd lose points. The strategy he suggests? Guess. Guess on everything. The best scores are the only ones who get a scholarship anyway. You need an amazing score, not just an average one. Even if you need to guess on everything to give yourself the slimmest chance of finishing at the top, do it. You'll probably do worse, but who cares? There's no scholarship for average. Combat Robotics is a competition won by attention to detail and consistent performance. Right choices are great, but wrong choices will cost you. And iteration trumps guesswork. Radix is not at the top, at least not close enough to talk about a Golden Brett. Not even a dumpster, really, in my opinion. A lot of changes will need to happen before he gets to that level. The next version of Radix, called Radix NXT, uses light and powerful brushless motors with indirect gear drive. The bot is shorter, more compact, and easier to control. If the previous versions of Radix were meant to tank hits, this one's meant to kill. I'm starting grad school in the fall and likely won't have time or money to fight this version of the bot before December. Yes, with so many changes and that little testing, Radix NXT will probably do worse than Radix version 5.
A light explosion for your evening pleasure.
However, I decided I'm not coming to finals to do well. I'm coming to win.